Olivia Harrow stared out of the small train window, watching as the landscape blurred past. The vast green hills of Yorkshire stretched endlessly, a sight that once filled her with peace. Now they seemed to mock her, each field and hill whispering memories she wished she could forget. The journey had taken her years to even consider, and as the train approached its destination, she felt the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. She had been away for far too long, living her life in the city, far from the haunting memories of Harrowfield Hall. But her mother's death had changed everything. The letter she'd received, the cold formal words announcing her mother's passing, had felt like an eerie summons. The lawyer's words were clear. Olivia was now the heir to Harrowfield Hall. Her mother had left everything behind, the manor, the land, and all the secrets it held. As the train pulled into the station, Olivia's stomach churned. She stepped onto the platform and was greeted by a chilling breeze that carried the scent of autumn leaves and something more sinister. The manor loomed in the distance, just beyond the hill. Even from here, she could see the outline of the building, tall and imposing against the gray sky. It was as if it was waiting for her, a reminder of a past she couldn't escape. The drive to the manor was brief but uncomfortable. The car's tires crunched over the gravel path, and the closer they got, the more Olivia's unease grew. Harrowfield Hall had always been a place of mystery, its tall stone walls and grand windows hiding more than just family portraits. It hid old wounds, unresolved tension, and a history that had long been forgotten. As the car pulled up to the front of the manor, Olivia took in the sight before her. The ivy had overtaken much of the stone facade, creeping up the walls as if it were trying to reclaim the house. The garden, once full of life, was now overgrown with weeds and thorns, the gate barely hanging on its hinges. "Home sweet home," she muttered to herself, sarcasm lacing her voice as she stepped out of the car. The door creaked as it opened, revealing a dimly lit hallway that smelled of dust and old wood. It was eerily quiet inside, the kind of silence that made her feel as if she were intruding on something sacred, something long forgotten. "Welcome back, Miss Olivia," came a soft voice from behind her. Mrs. Greenaway, the long-serving housekeeper, stood at the foot of the stairs. Her appearance was unchanged, her gray hair pulled back into a tight bun, her expression just as stern as Olivia remembered. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, of concern, that made Olivia pause. "Thank you, Mrs. Greenaway," Olivia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect it to feel like this." The housekeeper nodded, her lips tightening slightly. "It's always the same, Miss Olivia. Time doesn't change much around here, does it?" Olivia hesitated. There was something strange in her tone, something that made the hairs on the back of Olivia's neck stand up. "I'll show you to your room," Mrs. Greenaway continued, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. As Olivia followed her up the grand staircase, she couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching her. It was as if every room, every corner, held secrets she wasn't meant to uncover. And yet, deep inside, she knew that she had to. The evening arrived quickly at Harrowfield Hall. The faint glow of dusk filtered through the tall narrow windows, casting long shadows across the grand hallway. Olivia had unpacked in the room that once belonged to her mother. It was a place she had avoided for years, but now, it seemed almost impossible to stay away. The air was thick with memories, the soft scent of her mother's perfume still lingering in the fabric of the curtains. She wandered through the vast, quiet halls, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The manor seemed to stretch endlessly, each room filled with relics of a past that no longer felt like her own. There were family portraits lining the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved, but it was the old furniture and the thick dust covering everything that truly made her feel the weight of time. As Olivia passed by a large set of double doors at the end of the hall, she paused. The doors were slightly ajar, the faintest sliver of light spilling from within. Her curiosity piqued, and she stepped closer. The room beyond was unfamiliar, though it had once been part of the manor's main wing. It had been sealed off for as long as Olivia could remember, and yet now it beckoned her. Pushing the door open just enough to slip inside, Olivia was struck by the sense of stillness. The room was mostly empty, save for a large ancient desk piled with papers, some yellowed with age, others scrawled with notes in an unfamiliar handwriting. On the far wall, a tall bookshelf stretched from floor to ceiling, its shelves cluttered with dusty volumes, but it was the object resting on the desk that caught Olivia's eye. A weathered leather-bound journal, its edges frayed with time. Her heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary book. This was her mother's journal. Olivia reached out slowly, as if afraid it might vanish if she touched it too quickly. She ran her fingers over the cover, feeling the delicate impressions of the leather before flipping it open. The first page was covered in her mother's neat handwriting, but it wasn't what she had expected. It wasn't filled with the mundane details of everyday life. Instead, it was a list of names, dates, and places that meant nothing to Olivia at first glance. A small gasp escaped her lips as she read further. Her mother had written about meetings with various individuals, men and women whose names Olivia did not recognize. There were mentions of the Order, a group her mother had seemed to be involved with. And then, there was a phrase that stood out from the rest. The secret lies in the cellar beneath the West Wing. It is the key to everything. Her breath caught in her throat. The West Wing of the manor had always been the most mysterious part of the house. It had been off-limits to Olivia and her brother Charles, growing up, though the reason for the prohibition was never fully explained. Her mother had always been adamant that they stay away from it, but now, it seemed like the answers she sought were hidden there. Just as Olivia was about to turn the page, she heard a noise from the doorway. She spun around, her heart racing. Mrs. Greenaway stood in the doorway, her face as unreadable as ever. "You shouldn't be in here, Miss Olivia," she said quietly, stepping into the room. Her eyes flickered to the journal in Olivia's hands, and for a moment, there was a flash of something. Fear, perhaps, before she quickly masked it with a calm smile. "The room has not been used in many years." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. "Why was it locked?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. Mrs. Greenaway hesitated before speaking. "There are things in this house that are best left forgotten. Your mother. She had her reasons." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "What things, Mrs. Greenaway?" The housekeeper didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at the journal, then back to Olivia. "You should rest, Miss Olivia. Tomorrow we'll talk. There is much more to this house than you know." Olivia opened her mouth to protest, but the housekeeper was already turning away, her footsteps echoing down the long corridor. As she left, Olivia's eyes drifted back to the journal. She could feel the weight of the secrets it held, and she knew that Mrs. Greenaway was hiding something. Something important. The shadows in the hall seemed to lengthen as Olivia placed the journal back on the desk. She couldn't ignore it now. She would find the cellar beneath the West Wing, and she would uncover whatever it was her mother had been trying to protect. As she walked back to her room, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching her, that it knew she was getting closer to the truth. The next day, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mrs. Greenaway's words echoed in her mind. "There are things in this house that are best left forgotten." The cryptic warning seemed too pointed, too deliberate, as if the housekeeper was aware of something Olivia wasn't meant to know. But what? Determined to uncover more, Olivia decided to visit the West Wing that afternoon. She had to find that cellar. Whatever lay hidden there could be the key to understanding her mother's past, and her own family's dark history. The hallways of Harrowfield Hall were eerily silent, as though even the walls were holding their breath. The West Wing, though beautiful in its own right, felt colder, darker. The air was heavier, weighed down with secrets. Olivia had passed it countless times as a child, but never once had she stepped inside. The doors to the wing were always locked when they were young, and her mother had never allowed them near. But now, it was as if fate had drawn her here. She walked slowly, each step cautious, her fingers brushing against the carved wood of the doorframe as she passed. The old wood creaked under her weight, and a chill ran down her spine. She reached the door to the cellar. It was smaller than she expected, tucked away at the very end of the West Wing. A rusty iron handle gleamed faintly in the dim light. Olivia hesitated for a moment before grasping it. The door swung open with a low groan, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the dark. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and decay. Olivia could feel the weight of the years pressing in on her as she descended the steps, the faint sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the bottom, the cellar was vast, its walls lined with old wine racks, but what caught Olivia's attention was the far corner, where a large wooden chest sat, its surface worn and scratched by time. Her heart raced as she approached it. The chest seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as though it were alive. She could feel her mother's presence here, in this place, and she knew instinctively that this chest held the answer she had been seeking. Olivia knelt before the chest, her hands trembling as she ran her fingers along the lock. It was a heavy old-fashioned thing, and for a moment, She wondered if it would open at all. But then with a quiet click, the lock gave way, and she slowly lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a collection of papers, letters, photographs, and a thick leather-bound journal. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. This was it. This was what her mother had been hiding all along. She pulled the journal from the chest, its cover cracked and brittle. She could see the faint outline of words etched into the surface. With a deep breath, Olivia opened it. The first page contained a single sentence, written in her mother's familiar handwriting. "What they did to us in the war will never be forgotten." The words hit Olivia like a punch to the gut. The war. Of course, she had heard snippets of the family's involvement in wartime activities, but her mother had always been tight-lipped about it. Now it was clear. This was the key to the mystery that had haunted her family for decades. But before she could read further, the cellar door creaked behind her. Olivia spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Standing at the top of the stairs was Mrs. Greenaway, her face pale, her eyes wide with alarm. "You shouldn't have come down here," Mrs. Greenaway said, her voice trembling. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Olivia stood quickly, the journal still clutched tightly in her hands. "I have to know the truth," she said, her voice steady despite the rush of fear coursing through her veins. "My mother was hiding something. I need to know what it was." Mrs. Greenaway shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "There are things in this house that are better left unknown, Miss Olivia. Your mother knew that. She did what she could to protect you." Olivia's mind raced. What happened? What are you not telling me? For a moment, there was a heavy silence. Then Mrs. Greenaway stepped into the room, her voice barely above a whisper. "The order. Your mother was part of something dangerous. She made a deal with people who are still out there, people who will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried." Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. What kind of deal? Mrs. Greenaway's eyes flickered to the chest, then back to Olivia. "The kind that comes with a price." Before Olivia could ask anything more, the housekeeper turned abruptly and fled up the stairs, leaving Olivia standing in the cold, dark cellar, clutching the journal to her chest. The words she had just heard echoed in her mind, and she realized that she had only scratched the surface of the terrifying truth that lay buried in Harrowfield Hall. Olivia knew one thing for sure. She couldn't stop now. She had to uncover everything, no matter the cost. Olivia took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she slowly opened the chest. The air seemed to grow thicker with every passing second, charged with an unspoken tension. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the old cloth that wrapped the contents of the chest. Inside, there was a stack of yellowed papers, old photographs, and the thick leather-bound journal she had seen earlier. As she held the journal in her hands, the weight of it seemed almost symbolic. This was the key to everything, and Olivia could sense that the moment she opened it, her world would change forever. She turned to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was her mother's. The words were shaky, but clear. "They will come for us. They are already watching. I've done what I must to protect you, but they will never forgive me. Never." The words seemed to burn into Olivia's mind as she read them over and over. Who was her mother speaking of? Who were they? And what had she done to protect her family from these mysterious figures? Her eyes flicked to the photographs scattered inside the chest. Most of them were of her mother, taken in the days before Olivia was born, her face filled with youthful hope and optimism. But there were also images of men and women she didn't recognize, their faces serious and stern. Some of the photographs were taken in front of Harrowfield Hall itself, the house standing as it was now, old, weathered but proud. However, there was something unsettling about the images. The people in the photographs seemed to be watching her mother, following her every move with a dangerous intensity. Olivia's fingers traced the edges of one photo in particular, a group of people standing in front of a small building that was unfamiliar to her. The faces were shadowed, their identities obscured, but one figure stood out. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with piercing eyes that seemed to stare directly at Olivia from the photograph. There was no mistaking it. This man was still alive. She could feel the weight of his gaze from the photo as though it were burning into her very soul. She pulled the photograph closer, her breath catching in her throat. Was this the man her mother had warned her about? The one who had been watching her all these years? Suddenly, Olivia was pulled from her thoughts by a soft creaking noise behind her. She spun around, her heart racing. The door to the cellar was slightly ajar, and through the crack, she could see the outline of a figure. Her blood ran cold. "Who's there?" Olivia called out, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the figure stepped into view, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. It was Mrs. Greenaway, but her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "I told you not to come down here," Mrs. Greenaway whispered, her voice low and urgent. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Olivia stood, clutching the journal tightly to her chest. "I have to know the truth, Mrs. Greenaway," she said firmly. "You know something. You've been hiding it from me all this time. What is this? What happened to my mother?" The old housekeeper hesitated, her hands shaking as she clasped them together. She glanced around nervously before stepping closer to Olivia, lowering her voice. "Your mother was involved in something dangerous, something that goes beyond this house. It was never just about family. It was about power, control, and survival." Olivia's mind raced. "What are you talking about? What did my mother do?" Mrs. Greenaway's eyes darted to the chest, then to the journal in Olivia's hands. "She made a choice. A terrible choice. She became part of a secret organization, one that operated during the war. They promised her protection, but it came at a cost. And now they want something from you." Olivia's head was spinning. "No. That can't be true. My mother would never." "She did what she thought was right," Mrs. Greenaway interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion. "But it's too late now. You've opened the door, and there's no closing it again. They're watching you, Olivia. They've been watching you for years." The weight of Mrs. Greenaway's words hit Olivia like a ton of bricks. She felt a surge of panic rising within her. The secrets that had been buried for so long were now spilling into the open, and they were more terrifying than she had ever imagined. The cellar door slammed shut behind them, causing both of them to jump. Olivia's heart was pounding in her chest as she turned to face Mrs. Greenaway. "What now? What do we do?" Before Mrs. Greenaway could answer, there was a sound, a soft tapping like fingers drumming against the wood. Olivia turned toward the sound, her pulse quickening. From the far corner of the cellar, a figure emerged from the shadows. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. There, standing in the dim light, was the man from the photograph. His eyes locked onto hers, and Olivia knew this was the man her mother had feared. "You've been looking for answers, Olivia," the man said, his voice low and smooth. "But some answers are better left in the past." Olivia took a step back, her body frozen in terror. She had no idea who this man was, but she could feel the weight of danger pressing down on her. The past had come rushing back, and with it, the darkness that her mother had tried so desperately to hide. The man's lips curled into a slight smile. "It's too late to turn back now." The air in the cellar had turned sharp, each breath scraping at Olivia's lungs like frost. The man stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the stone floor toward her. Mrs. Greenaway grabbed Olivia's arm, her voice urgent. "Run! Now!" But Olivia couldn't move. Her feet were rooted to the ground, her mind racing, trying to process the figure before her. His face was older than in the photograph, but the eyes were the same, ice-cold, calculating, and filled with something ancient and cruel. "I told your mother she couldn't hide forever," the man said quietly, his gaze still locked on Olivia. "She thought burying the truth in this house would keep it safe. But you were always the final key." "What truth?" Olivia demanded, her voice shaking despite her best effort to sound strong. "What do you want from me?" The man raised an eyebrow, almost amused. "Not from you. Through you." Before she could ask what he meant, Mrs. Greenaway yanked her away, pulling her towards a narrow passage behind one of the shelves. Olivia hadn't noticed it before. The old woman's strength surprised her, but she didn't resist. They slipped through the hidden doorway just as the man took another step forward. Darkness swallowed them. The corridor behind the shelf was damp and narrow, the stone walls brushing against Olivia's shoulders as they ran. Mrs. Greenaway moved with urgency, as if she knew every corner of the house, even the parts Olivia had never seen. "What is this place?" Olivia gasped, nearly stumbling on uneven ground. "Harrowfield has many bones," Mrs. Greenaway muttered. "Your great-grandfather built these tunnels during the war. They were meant to hide people. Secrets. Treachery." They came to a heavy wooden door, and Mrs. Greenaway produced a rusted iron key from her pocket. With a click, the door opened, revealing a hidden chamber. A small lantern flickered in the corner, casting an eerie glow over the room. It was lined with shelves, filled with books, maps, and worn documents. "This is where your mother worked in the end," the old woman said, breathless. "She came down here in the evenings, always writing, always searching." Olivia stepped forward and picked up one of the maps. It was of the countryside surrounding Harrowfield Hall, with red ink circling several locations. Strange symbols were marked across it, none that Olivia recognized. What was she looking for? Mrs. Greenaway hesitated, then whispered, "A way out." Olivia stared at her. "Out of what?" Mrs. Greenaway looked around nervously before answering. "The pact. During the war, your great-grandfather made a deal with a group calling themselves the Sovereigns. They were an unofficial order, men and women who believed certain families must retain power, even if it meant using unholy methods." Olivia felt her skin prickle. "You're saying my family was part of some secret society?" "Worse than that," the housekeeper said, voice shaking. "They didn't just deal in information or politics. They experimented. With minds. With memory. With the fabric of what makes us human." Olivia staggered back, her head spinning. "Your mother tried to escape it all," Mrs. Greenaway continued. "But she found something she wasn't meant to. Something that led to her death." A deep rumble echoed through the tunnel, and dust fell from the ceiling. "They're coming," the old woman whispered. "They know you found the chamber." Olivia reached for her mother's journal, which she had clutched against her chest since the cellar. She flipped to the bookmarked page. There, scribbled hastily in the margins, was a phrase. "The chapel. Beneath the roots. Where it all began." "I know where we need to go," Olivia said, her voice low. Mrs. Greenaway turned to her with wide eyes. "No. That's where they took the first child. That place is cursed." "Then that's where I'll find the truth." Without waiting, Olivia turned and began moving back through the passage, her fear replaced by something fiercer, resolve. Back in the house, the man stood where they had vanished. He stared at the opening in the shelf, then reached into his coat and removed a silver pendant. Holding it to the light, it shimmered briefly before the markings on the wall began to glow. "She's further along than I thought," he murmured. A voice crackled in his earpiece. "Proceed with caution. The ritual must not be interrupted." He smiled faintly. "It won't be. She's walking straight into it." Unaware of the ancient forces converging around her, Olivia made her way toward the chapel, her mother's journal gripped in her hand, the walls of Harrowfield whispering secrets in every step she took. The roots beneath the house stirred. The wind howled as Olivia pushed open the heavy chapel doors. The building stood at the edge of the estate, half hidden by skeletal trees whose branches clawed at the crumbling stone walls. It had not been used for decades. Ivy crept along the structure like veins on ancient skin, and the stained glass windows were cracked and clouded with age. She stepped inside. The scent of mildew and cold stone struck her instantly. Dust floated in the golden shafts of light piercing through the high windows. Pews lay broken and twisted, as though tossed by unseen hands. At the far end of the chapel, the altar stood untouched, its surface blanketed in dust. Mrs. Greenaway arrived moments later, wheezing from the walk. She clutched a heavy ring of keys and looked around nervously. "This place hasn't been opened in years," she said. "Not since the incident." Olivia ignored the comment and approached the altar. She dropped to her knees, running her hands along the floorboards. The journal had said, "Beneath the roots." If the roots had spread through the foundations, they would have pulled at the stone. She knocked on the boards until she heard a hollow sound. "Here." Together, they pried up the loose planks. Beneath them lay a stone trapdoor, etched with the same symbols that marked the pages of her mother's journal. A heavy iron ring served as the handle. Olivia grasped it and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing a stone staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Mrs. Greenaway took a cautious step back. "Are you sure you want to go down there?" "No," Olivia whispered. "But I have to." They descended into the cold gloom. The steps were damp and narrow, worn by time. The walls pulsed with moisture and decay. As they reached the bottom, Olivia lit her torch. The beam swept across a vast underground chamber. Vines grew across the walls like veins, curling around dozens of wooden crates, old trunks, and faded banners marked with the sovereign symbol. At the center stood a stone pedestal. Upon it lay a book bound in cracked leather. Olivia approached slowly, brushing the dust from its cover. Her mother's handwriting was scrawled across the first page. To those who find this, know that power taken without consequence will demand payment. The sovereigns believed they could shape time, but time always reshapes us. Mrs. Greenaway stood by the entrance, eyes wide with dread. This was their sanctuary, she murmured. Their heart. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber. So you finally returned. Olivia turned sharply. The man from the cellar stepped from the shadows, his coat hanging like a curtain of darkness. But he was not alone. Figures in black emerged behind him. 3, then 5, then more, faces hidden behind masks etched with strange runes. Put the book down, the man said. You don't understand what you've brought back into the light. Olivia held it tighter. You murdered my mother. We preserved what she was about to destroy. The knowledge in that journal could unravel everything we've worked for. You mean the lies you've buried for generations, she snapped. The experiments. The manipulation. The murders. The man sighed, stepping closer. You're too young to carry this burden. Walk away. Leave the past where it belongs. No. With one swift motion, Olivia turned and placed the journal into the pedestal's hidden drawer. As she did, the chamber began to shake. The roots pulsing along the walls turned a deep red, and a low hum filled the space. A mechanism clicked beneath the floor, and a section of the wall behind the pedestal groaned open, revealing another passage. The masked figure surged forward, but the roots snapped to life, twisting around them like serpents. One by one, they fell, screaming as the vines dragged them into the darkness. Mrs. Greenaway cried out. You've awakened it. The heart of the manor. But Olivia was already moving, heading into the newly revealed corridor. The air grew warmer, charged with electricity. The walls shimmered with images. Fragments of memory. Her mother as a child. A masked ritual. A fire. Screams. This was the truth Harrowfield had buried. This was the cost of silence. Olivia turned back once, seeing the man struggle against the vines now wrapping his throat. His eyes met hers, no longer cruel but terrified. She stepped into the final corridor. And the door closed behind her. The corridor sloped gently downward, winding like a serpent through the ancient bedrock of Harrowfield. Olivia's footsteps echoed in eerie rhythm, the only sound apart from her quickened breathing. The air grew heavier the deeper she went, dense with the scent of damp stone and something else. Something metallic, like rusted iron or old blood. The flickering beam of her torch danced across the walls, which had transformed from bare stone to intricate carvings. Faces, eyes, hands, each etched with uncanny precision. It felt as though the very walls were watching. Mrs. Greenaway, still trembling but determined, followed closely behind. This place, she whispered, was never meant to be found. They reached the bottom. Before them stretched a vast circular chamber, walls lined with mirrors that distorted and multiplied their reflections. In the center stood a single stone chair facing an enormous mirror unlike the rest. It shimmered with a pale silvery glow, like moonlight trapped beneath glass. This is the Chamber of Echoes, Mrs. Greenaway murmured, where they held their trials, their visions. Olivia stepped cautiously toward the chair. As she approached, the mirror flickered. Her own reflection stared back, but it was not her. It was her mother. She gasped. The image in the mirror raised a hand and placed it on the glass. A voice, low and melodic, filled the room, not from the mirror, but from the chamber itself. You've come farther than any of them. It was her mother's voice. Who are you? Olivia asked, though her heart already knew. I am what remains, the voice replied. Memories held in the bloodline. Secrets etched into stone. You are the last Bennett who still seeks the truth. I need to know everything, Olivia said firmly. Why did you hide all this? Why did they kill you? The voice hesitated, then began. In the final days of the war, the sovereigns discovered a rift, an echo in time buried beneath Harrowfield. They believed they could manipulate fate, reshape destiny by rewriting moments through ritual. But every change demanded a sacrifice. Images began to form in the mirror. Flashes of war, rituals in the chapel, families torn apart, and finally, a woman standing at the edge of a burning room, clutching a child. You! You tried to stop them, Olivia whispered. I did, her mother confirmed. And they silenced me. But they could not destroy the truth. That's why I left the journal. You are stronger than I ever was. Olivia felt her knees weaken. Behind her, Mrs. Greenaway had tears in her eyes. Your mother risked everything. The voice grew faint. You must decide, Olivia. Destroy the echoes and end the sovereign's hold forever, or open the gate and uncover what lies beyond. The mirror began to glow brighter. Symbols appeared on the floor around the chair, familiar ones from the journal. A mechanism clicked. The chamber was waking. From the corridor behind them, the sound of footsteps. Many. They're coming, Mrs. Greenaway whispered. Masked figures flooded into the chamber, led by the man with the scarred cheek. His face pale, livid. Step away from the mirror, he commanded. Olivia stood tall. You've lied long enough. He raised his hand, and the masked figures surged forward. But as they crossed the threshold, the symbols on the floor ignited in blue fire. A barrier rose, flinging them back. The man screamed in fury. You can't stop this, he shouted. If you close the chamber, it'll consume you too. I know. Olivia placed her hand against the mirror. The room shook. The lights flared. The voices, echoes of the past, rose like a chorus of wind. And then, the mirror shattered. A blinding light burst from its core, flooding the chamber in brilliance. The masked figures screamed and scattered. The stone walls trembled. Mrs. Greenaway shielded her face. Olivia! But Olivia stood still, eyes wide, her body bathed in light. In that moment she understood. The echoes were not memories. They were warnings. Every mistake, every betrayal, every broken promise carved into the soul of Harrowfield. She felt it all. And she saw what lay beyond. A door. A single, silent door. It began to open. And Olivia stepped through. The light that had burst from the shattered mirror slowly faded, revealing a space that had transformed entirely. The chamber no longer resembled the dark, echoing crypt of stone. It was blanketed in a gentle luminescence, as though the very walls breathed with newfound life. The once flickering torches were now extinguished, yet the room glowed. Olivia stood still. Her fingers, once trembling, now felt calm and strong. Around her, the symbols on the ground continued to burn with blue fire, keeping the masked sovereigns at bay. Their leader, the man with the scar, had fled during the blast, his threat vanquished for now. Mrs. Greenaway, pale and exhausted, approached Olivia slowly. What did you see? She asked, voice almost reverent. Olivia turned to her, eyes full of clarity. A truth they buried. A door hidden beneath every lie told in this house. She looked down. Beneath the remains of the mirror, where glass had scattered like crystal tears, a hatch was embedded in the stone floor, nearly invisible if not for the faint outline glowing beneath the ash. Without hesitation, Olivia knelt and brushed the debris aside. The symbols around the hatch shimmered in response. Together, she and Mrs. Greenaway pulled it open. A ladder descended into darkness. Olivia went first, gripping the metal rungs that were cold to the touch. The descent was long, far longer than any basement should allow. The air grew colder, and time seemed to lose shape. Finally, she reached the bottom. A narrow tunnel stretched ahead, walls lined with plaques bearing names. Bennett, Whitmore, Carter. They were family names, bloodlines once tied to Harrowfield and its secrets. This was no mere crypt. It was a ledger of the forgotten. At the end of the tunnel stood a massive wooden door bound in iron. It pulsed faintly, as if waiting. Olivia stepped forward, but Mrs. Greenaway gripped her arm. Whatever lies behind that door, it might not let you leave. I know, Olivia said, her voice steady. But it's time. She placed her hand on the iron lock. A soft chime rang out. The door creaked open. Inside was not darkness, but a room of light, pure, golden and endless. Floating in the center was a book, ancient and glowing. The pages turned slowly on their own. Olivia stepped in. The door did not shut behind her. Instead, it widened, as if welcoming her. She reached the book. It was bound in leather, its cover etched with the same sigil that marked her mother's journal. As her fingers touched the page, images surged into her mind. Not just memories. Futures. Possibilities. Warnings. The book did not tell the truth. It held it, waiting for someone brave enough to read. She saw her mother as a child, laughing in the summer gardens of Harrowfield. She saw her mother later, running through the manor during a storm, a journal clutched to her chest. She saw the night she died, chased, cornered, betrayed. And she saw the sovereigns, not as shadows, but as people. Ordinary. Once. Frightened of change. Hungry for control. The book asked her a silent question. Would she seal the knowledge inside? Let the past remain buried to protect the world from its dangers? Or reveal it, and let the world choose its own truth? Olivia turned the final page. Her name was there. Not written by her, but long before her time. She will come when the house breathes again. And she will open the door. She looked up. Mrs. Greenaway had entered the room, her eyes full of tears. You've always been meant for this, she whispered. I don't want power, Olivia said. Only peace. She reached into the book. The room responded. The light flared, not violently, but like sunrise on a winter's day. Outside, Harrowfield trembled, but did not fall. The walls held. The rot receded. Paintings once gray now glistened with color. The air changed. Warmth returned. The sovereigns scattered. Without the echo chamber, without the book, their influence faded like mist at morning. When Olivia emerged from the tunnel, it was to a dawn that didn't feel like any before. The sky above Harrowfield was clear. The trees that once bent inward now stretched outward, basking in the light. Birds sang where there had been only silence. She stood on the manor's porch. Mrs. Greenaway at her side. You've done it, the woman said softly. But Olivia shook her head. No, she replied. I've only just begun. She looked over the land her family once ruled with secrets, now free. Not from burden, but from silence. Harrowfield would never be the same. And neither would she.